Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our new series on the lives of the Caesar by Suetonius. He was a pretty interesting guy. Uh, Obviously, he's given a little bit of leeway in his biography and, information on the Caesars. But he has given us much to think about. Just to reiterate, Sulla has died, and remember, Caesar stood up to Sulla. Caesar has been moving from place to place, trying to avoid Sulla's men, and Marcus Lepidus is trying to lead a counter-revolution, and that is where we are. And Caesar was appointed with a civic crown by Mytilene Thermus, so that's where we are. Then, after the civil disturbance had been quieted, he brought a charge of extortion against Cornelius Dolabella, ex-consul who had been honored with triumph. So Caesar has brought some charges of extortion against Cornelius. Let's see what the evidence is. On the acquittal of Dolabella, Caesar determined to withdraw to Rhodes to escape from the ill will which he had incurred, and at the same time to rest and have leisure to study under Apollonius Molo. Okay, so Caesar, I mean, if you bring some charges against somebody of extortion and you lose, well, you gotta get out of there, essentially. So now Caesar has to go away from Dolabella. He had to go away from Caesar, so now he's going to go study under Apollonius Molo, the most eminent teacher of oratory of that time. So, no wonder why Caesar was so great at putting energy into his men. He was trained by one of the top orators of his time. So, wow, mashallah. While crossing to Rhodes after the winter season had already begun, he was taken by pirates near the island of Pharmacusa. So this is very famous, when he's actually held hostage by pirates, right? And remained in their custody for nearly 40 days in a state of intense vexation. Attended only by a single physician and 2 body servants, for he had sent off his traveling companions and the rest of his attendants at the outset to raise money for his ransom. So think about that. He is with these rowdy pirates, They don't really know who he is. He's a noble. He has to convince them, hey, don't kill me. I gotta send my friends to go get you money, and let me go. Pirates agreed. But think also about this. Caesar didn't know if those people were gonna come back with the ransom money. They could have got the ransom money from the Julii family, and then just went and spent it and say, oh, Caesar can go die by the pirates. And the pirates have been like, hey, your time's up. We're going to execute you because your pals didn't return with the money we wanted. So, this Caesar survives Sulla and then gets captured by pirates. It's just like, it's amazing. Once he was set on shore on a payment of 50 talents, he did not delay then and there to launch a fleet and pursue the departing pirates. So notice this. So, he got the money, he's paying them, and now he's going after the pirates. And the moment they were in his power to inflict on them the punishment which he had often threatened when joking with them, he then proceeded to Rhodes, but as Mithridates was devastating the neighborhood regions, he crossed over into Asia to avoid the appearance of inaction when the allies of the Roman people were in danger. There he levied a band of auxiliaries and drove the king's prefect from the province, thus holding the wavering, irresolute states to their allegiance. So, it's interesting that he chases the pirates, he threatens them, goes on over to Rhodes. Mithridates is like, hey, causing some problems, right? And then he goes into Asia, goes over there, and then levies some auxiliaries, and then, drives the king's prefects from the province and holds it. I mean, talk about stamina, you know what I'm saying? It's amazing. While serving as military tribune, the first office which was conferred on him by vote of the peoples after his return to Rome, he ardently supported the leaders in the attempt to re-establish the authority of the tribunes and the commons. Okay, so Caesar goes on over to Rome. He gets to become an office. He's a military tribune. and he is voting to reestablish the authority of tribunes of the commons. Very involved in politics. The extent of which Sulla had curtailed. So he's undoing what Sulla did. Sulla was like, no, we're gonna stop that. Caesar's reversed it. Tells you a lot. Furthermore, through a bill proposed by one Plotius, he effected the recall of his wife's brother's Licinius Cinna. So his brother-in-law was sent away, and now Caesar has the power to have him be okay to come back. Sulla's dead, right? As well as the others who had taken part with Lepidus in his revolution after the consul's death, had fled to Suetonius, and he personally spoke in favor of the measure. So he's personally spoken, given his say, helps them to come back. Very good, very good. When quaestator, he pronounced the customary orations from the rostra in praise of his Aunt Julia and his wife Cornelia, who had both died. Oh yes, so this is a very famous scene. Yeah, I mean, people have recounted that it was quite beautiful. I mean, this is a moment where his oration skills were really out in the open for many of the population to see. At the death of his wife Cornelia, a lot of people consider this a big shift in his personality because of how, you know, it changed him. I mean, wouldn't you change after your partner has died, you know? And he's still young and in power. And in the eulogy of his aunt, he spoke in the following terms of her paternal and maternal ancestry, that of his own father. So also the aunt scene, right? The family of my Aunt Julia is descended by her mother from the kings, and on the father's side akin to the immortal gods, for the Marquis Regis of her family name go back to Ancus Marcius. So here, it was very popular for Romans to claim to have a divine descent, to say, oh, my house could be traced back to Zeus, to Apollo, to Heracles. Obviously all made up, right? There's only one God. It's Allah. But we're dealing with the past. They would do this a lot. So him talking about his aunt having some type of, you know, relation to Mount Olympus is not unordinary for the people at this time. And the Julii, the family of which ours is a branch to Venus. So here, Venus. So which god did he claim his aunt was descended from? Venus. Whose Venus was supposed to be the beauty lady, right? Our stock, therefore, has at once the sanctity of kings, whose power is supreme among mortal men, and the claim to reverence which attaches to the gods, who sway over the kings themselves. So this is supposed to be what Suetonius wrote down for us of what you say when at a funeral, right? Very interesting. In place of Cornelia, he took wife Pompeia, daughter of Quintus Pompeius, and granddaughter of Lucius Sulla. So look at this. Cornelia's dead, and he's going to marry the daughter Pompeia of Quintus Pompeius. And that is basically Sulla's granddaughter. Just think about that for a second. Sulla was going to kill Caesar. Caesar survives, then marries the granddaughter of the same guy who wanted to kill him. But he afterward divorced her, suspecting her of adultery with Publius Clodius, and in fact the report that Clodius had gained access to her in woman's garb during a public religious ceremony was so persistent that the Senate decreed that the pollution of the sacred rites be judicially investigated. So supposedly this dude, Publius Clodius, dressed up in the women's clothing, because they used to kind of cover themselves, right? A lot of people forget that. And he went in and spied on what the women were doing, like their private women rituals. Like it's like basically they were having, you know, discussions, you know, like a ladies' night. But they had rituals too. Who knows what they were? But they're very private. Men were not allowed. So he put on a garb, pretended to be a lady, and went in there. Oh my gosh. So they have to be like, hey, we need to investigate how a guy went in, acting, pretending to be a woman, got in. Right? He probably got caught because of his shoulders, And because of his voice, he probably had like a fake voice, and then like, what are you gonna do? It is hilarious. Oh my gosh. As questator, it fell to his lot to serve in farther Spain. When he was there, while making the circuit of the assize towns to hold court under commission from the praetor, he came to Gades. Okay, so notice this. Caesar, as a questator, went to Spain. This dude's traveling. Think about it. That's pretty far. Pretty far. From Rome to Spain? No cars? Horseback? It's pretty far. And noticing a statue of Alexander the Great in the temple of Heracles. A statue of Alexander in the temple of Heracles. Very interesting. And the Macedonian ruler, conqueror, I hope you know who he is. He heaved a sigh as if out of patience with his own incapacity and having as yet done nothing noteworthy. At a time of life when Alexander had already brought to the world to his feet, he straightway asked for his discharge to grasp the first opportunity for greater enterprises at Rome. What's interesting, who knows how true it is, but people would argue that Alexander looked up to Heracles, right? Caesar looked up to Alexander, right? And then everyone else who came after looked up to Caesar. There's like these chains of powerful men doing things in the antiquity time periods, and how that would successfully like lead to lots of rulers wanting to present themselves, right? It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Furthermore, when he was dismayed by a dream the following night, for he thought that he had offered violence to his mother, the soothsayers inspired him with high hopes by their interpretation, which was that he was destined to rule the world, since the mother whom he had seen in his power was none other than the earth, which is regarded as the common parent of all mankind. So a soothsayer doing dream interpretations of Caesar. So it's interesting, right? He troubled by a dream, wants to go get it checked out. It's very interesting. Departing, therefore, before his term was over, he went to the Latin colonies, which were in a state of unrest and meditating a demand for citizenship. And he might have spurred them on to some rash act, had not the consuls, in anticipation of that very danger, detained there for a time the legions which had enrolled in the service of Sicilia. So detaining the legions, right? Spurring them on to some rash act. Going over to the Latin colonies. See, at this time, a person with many legions could do a lot of damage, right? So they're like, hey, he's got a lot of legions. Check him out. What is going to happen? They're like, hey, we gotta get this guy in check before he goes around causing trouble, you know? It's pretty funny. For all that he had presently made a more daring attempt at Rome, for a few days before he entered upon the aedileship, and that is spelled Aedileship, he was suspected of having made a conspiracy with Marcus Crassus, another person of history, Marcus Crassus, an ex-consul, and likewise Publius Sulla, Lucius Suetonius, who, after their election to consulship, had been found guilty of corrupt practices. So, imagine being written down in the books of history, Lucius Antonius and Publius Sulla as having done something corrupt. But Suetonius is not leaving us out some of the juicy commentary of that time. I mean, it's just fascinating. His aedileship, so he had all these different things appointed onto him, right? Aedileship, he was a questator. I mean, he was captured by pirates, went to the court of Nicomedes, was given the civic crown by Mytilene Thermus, accused someone of extortion, had to go away, had to run away from Sulla. Oh my gosh, just so much action this guy has in his life already. And this is before he even went to Gaul, you know? Just so much action.